Welcome to today's Explainer. Today, we're going to unpack a truly brilliant research paper from the Karlsruhe Institute of Technology. This paper, put together by Christoph Schied, Christoph Peters, and Karsten Daxbacher, is honestly a total game changer for hyper-realistic video game graphics. If you've ever found yourself just stopping in the middle of a game to marvel at how incredibly lifelike the lighting is, and you've kind of wondered, how on earth are they pulling this off behind the scenes? Well, you are in exactly the right place. Let's get into it. Okay, so here is the million-dollar question we have to start with. How do we actually achieve this insane level of realism in real time without our hardware literally catching fire? To answer that, we've got to talk about path tracing. Now, path tracing is amazing. It simulates the actual physical behavior of light to create those stunningly realistic scenes we all love. But there's a catch. It's incredibly computationally heavy. I mean, it's a massive problem. To keep our render speeds real-time, we have to strictly limit how many light calculations we can afford to do for every single pixel on the screen. And the visual consequence of that strict limitation? Well, it's pretty severe. Just take a close look at this incredibly noisy, grainy image. This right here is exactly what happens when we can only afford one single sample per pixel. In the graphics world, that's often called one SSP. Because we only have one stochastic sample figuring out the shading for each pixel, the result is basically a chaotic speckled mess. It's like trying to guess what a puzzle looks like when you've only got one piece. It is absolutely nowhere near the pristine, polished quality we expect in modern games. So how do we fix that awful noise without frying our GPUs? Developers rely on a really clever trick called temporal filtering. Think of it as a smart reconstruction technique. The algorithm basically looks back in time. It borrows pixel data or temporal information from past frames and reuses it to smooth out the noise in the current frame. When this works the way it's supposed to, you get these beautifully stable, denoised results out of that messy one-sample input. But here's where things get a bit tricky. Borrowing all that past information actually creates a bit of a trap. Older temporal filtering methods, like standard SVGF, reuse this historical data almost entirely blindly. If nothing in your scene is moving or changing, hey, it works great. But what happens if a light suddenly switches off? Or what if you whip the camera around rapidly? Because the standard SVGF is still stubbornly pulling in pixel history from a millisecond ago when the light was on, you start getting some seriously ugly visual artifacts. I'm talking about very noticeable ghosting and heavy lag. You can actually see that exact problem in action right here. On one side, we have a perfectly clean reference frame for comparison, and on the other, you're looking at the output from that older standard SVGF method. Notice how a blue area light is flickering and the camera is shifting slightly. That standard method introduces terrible temporal blur. When the light source turns off, the lighting on screen visibly lags behind what's actually happening. And check out those glossy highlights on the floor. As the camera moves, they leave this smeared, smudgy trail that completely breaks the immersion. Section 1. Introducing Adaptive Temporal Filtering. To solve this exact smudging glitch, the researchers developed something called ASVGF. And it relies on a smartly optimized algorithm that repurposes just a tiny fraction of the overall shading budget to sparsely sample and reconstruct what's called the temporal gradient. It does this in 3 elegant steps. First, it forward projects surface samples from the previous frame. Second, it reevaluates the shading samples using the exact same random sequence. And finally, by comparing these, it drives adaptive accumulation factors for every single pixel. Now, if that sounds super technical, don't worry. The easiest way to visualize how this works in practice is to think of this new algorithm as a highly intelligent, smart bouncer standing at the door of your current frame. This bouncer is dynamically making snap decisions on exactly which historical pixels are allowed into the club to help denoise the image, and which ones are just too stale to enter. If a light suddenly turns off, our bouncer recognizes that sudden change in the signal and immediately kicks the stale history information to the curb. Let's actually take a peek into the brain of this filter. This heat map shows us the adaptive temporal accumulation factor, or the alpha value. Those bright yellow regions, that is our bouncer working overtime. Because a blue area light just flickered on in the scene, the algorithm detected the massive signal change and spiked the alpha value, turning those areas yellow on the heat map. It's basically forcing the system to reject the outdated history for those specific pixels right away. And you know what? The algorithm is just as brilliant when it comes to motion. Check out those sharp yellow trails tracing along the floor and the arches. As the camera shifts, the ASVGF filter is successfully detecting sudden changes from moving glossy highlights. It's instantly telling the filter, hey, stop pulling from previous frames right here, ensuring that those reflections stay sharp and never smear across your screen. When we finally put it all together and compare the old SVGF method with this new ASVGF, the difference is, it's night and day. The old method completely struggles with the camera movement and flickering lights, leaving behind those awful, distracting magenta-hued trail artifacts and totally ruined glossy reflections. But with ASVGF, the ghosting is literally gone. The lighting is crisp, reacting instantly to the flickering source without a hint of lag. The bouncer absolutely nailed the job. So, by estimating these gradients to figure out adaptive accumulation factors on a pixel-by-pixel basis, ASVGF achieves some pretty remarkable things for real-time path tracing. We've seen a massive reduction in lag, and it effectively eliminates that terrible ghosting effect. But beyond that, it vastly improves the overall temporal stability of the scene, simply because the system can finally reliably drop stale historical data the absolute millisecond it becomes outdated. But honestly, what is truly mind-blowing about this research isn't just how good it looks. It's the sheer efficiency. This highly complex adaptive filter runs in just 2 milliseconds at 1080p resolution on modern graphics hardware. Let that sink in for a second. Just 2 milliseconds. It's sparsely sampling, reconstructing temporal gradients, and dynamically filtering millions of pixels so flawlessly that just one single ray trace sample per pixel ends up looking incredibly realistic. This level of optimized outside-the-box problem-solving is exactly what pushes the whole gaming industry forward. So as we wrap up today's explainer, I want to leave you with this thought. If developers can execute this level of flawless, intelligent filtering in literally 2 milliseconds right now, overcoming the physical limits of the hardware we have today, just how indistinguishable from reality will our digital worlds be tomorrow? Thank you so much for exploring this fascinating breakthrough with me today. And hey, keep an eye out for those glossy highlights next time you boot up a game.